Again, I'm Philippa Thomas and you're watching Impact from the BBC. Our main news today. World leaders have condemned North Korea for carrying out its largest ever nuclear test, with the South calling it an act of maniacal recklessness. Dozens of tourists who were trapped overnight in cable cars dangling above the Alps have all been safely rescued. I don't know whether you've heard of canned lion hunting. It's the practice of hunting lions bred in captivity. And a new report has found that every year tens of thousands of animals die in this way in order to become hunting trophies. Now the World Conservation Congress is calling on South Africa to ban the practice. It is the biggest exporter of animal heads. The US is the biggest importer. Alistair Leithhead's report contains some images that you could find distressing.
On the lookout for lions in South Africa's northernmost province. But this is not a tourist safari to photograph animals. This is a hunting reserve. They're nervous of the car.
There is a lot of controversy when it comes to the canned lion industry, or the so-called canned lion industry, and it's put a bad name on hunting in general. So we totally condemn any illegal hunting.
Canned lion hunting is when animals bred in captivity and used to humans are delivered to be killed, more like a duck shoot than a lion hunt. This disturbing video, given to the BBC, shows a group of American hunters who shot 10 lions in a week.
Load. Shoot him again, shoot him again, shoot him again. Shoot him again! Hey, you.
The cameraman decided to speak out about the ethics, disturbed by what he'd filmed. The lions were brought into this small area the day before the hunt.
Right from the start, it's told to the guys, it's very dangerous. These are wild animals. It's very scary, Slaps on the back. You're such a hero. Look at what you've done. You've got your king of the jungle. Meanwhile, it's all just a lie.
Campaigners are disgusted.
I think from the outset, the notion that you breed an animal to release it into a confined area and it gets shot under these sort of conditions is appalling.
We were invited to a breeding facility to show the lions were well looked after. Their enclosures were small. Well, these lions have all been bred in captivity. There are about 35 of them in these enclosures in this farm. And their sole purpose is to be bred to be taken out onto hunting lodges and shot by hunters. Yeah. Supporters say it means wild lions aren't killed and large areas are conserved. What would happen if hunting was banned in South Africa?
That'll actually be very much a negative implication for the South African economy, firstly. Hunting generates a lot of money from overseas people.
And it is big business. Hundreds of captive-bred lions are killed every year in South Africa. Alistair Leithhead, BBC News, Limpopo Province.
A major British review of evidence about drugs known as statins has concluded that their benefits have been underestimated and the harms exaggerated. Critics say healthy people are being unnecessarily encouraged to take these drugs and they then suffer from uncomfortable side effects. Our health correspondent Sophie Hutchinson reports.
Heart attacks and strokes, often life-threatening emergencies, are among the UK's biggest killer. Statins are recommended to prevent them, but that sparked controversy about whether too many healthy people at low risk are being prescribed them. The review of the safety and efficacy of statins, which lower cholesterol, aims to clear up the debate. Researchers who examined a large amount of data concluded that taking statins over 5 years protected 10% of people at high risk of heart attacks and strokes and 5% of people at risk because of their age, blood pressure or diabetes. And side effects were low, with up to 1% of people suffering from muscle pain.
These benefits far outweigh the small harms associated with statin. And if you have a heart attack and stroke, it can be fatal. The damage can be irreversible, whereas the side effects, the muscle problem that rarely occurs, if you stop the drug, it goes away.
Statins are among the most common commonly prescribed drugs in the UK. It's estimated that around 6 million people take them. But the authors of today's report say an extra 2 million people should be on them. And guidelines suggest it could be many millions more. But there's concern from a minority group of critics that healthy people are being encouraged to take pills unnecessarily, and they've strongly criticised today's report for lacking independence.
I've treated thousands of patients with heart disease in my career, and in my own experience and looking at other data and speaking to other doctors, about 1 in 5 patients at some point taking a statin will experience a side effect that interferes with the quality of life, most commonly fatigue or muscle pain.
Many family doctors have struggled to convince patients to take statins. The Royal College of GPs is among a number of major organisations backing today's report, agreeing the drugs are the best way to protect patients. Sophie Hutchinson, BBC News.
Now, of course, this isn't just an issue in the UK, it's a global issue. These kind of drugs known as statins are taken around the world. And in the next hour, we'll talk about that and about the way that people use them in India, Pakistan, China, for example. Whether they are beneficial or not matters to a huge number of people. Now, did you know that most beekeepers in China keep bees that have been imported from Europe? Apparently, they're easier to manage and produce more honey. But a decade ago, 60-year-old Li Yongchang decided to keep indigenous Chinese bees in the hope of pulling them back from the verge of extinction. And he says he is now on a mission to pass on his beekeeping skills.
In China, these indigenous honeybees are an endangered species. They're on the verge of extinction. This is a nature reserve. Many villagers keep Chinese bees for a living, but I keep the most, more than 150 hives. When I was a child, these indigenous bees were everywhere. In the summer you could see them in tree holes and caves, but now they've almost disappeared. There's so few of them left. Many beekeepers choose to keep imported European bees because they produce more honey and are easier to manage. But someone has to care for the Chinese honeybees before they die out. They are essential to our ecosystem. Chinese bees are more agile. They endure lower temperature and have more acute senses. The pollination of many plants growing in cold and damp places depends on them. If they die out on this land, the plants and animals that rely on them will also die. It will be an environmental disaster. Keeping Chinese honeybees is not easy. They like to sting, and they don't like to stay in their nests. I have to keep their honeycombs away from each other. If any bee flies into the wrong nest, others will kill it. Building nature reserves is not enough. We have to educate the whole society, especially those who keep European bees. While I'm still healthy, I want to pass on all my beekeeping knowledge to my son. I will continue no matter what happens.
The life of a Chinese beekeeper there, Li Yongchang. And staying with China, in our next edition, he still haunts the country. Exactly 40 years after his death, we'll be looking at the legacy of Chairman Mao and talk about how hard it is for China's Communist Party to form an official line about him. Do stay with us.
Thank you for joining me. Well, the weather across the tropics in Africa is very active at the moment. Lots of storms brewing through this tropical zone. In fact, all the way from the heart of Africa, around the Gulf of Guinea, all the way to southern parts of Mali and